We're still decorated for the 4th of July because half of our congregation is still celebrating the 4th of July. And we have a funeral here on Tuesday, but your daddy was a Marine. I don't think he'd mind that. No? So I don't know when the plans are to take it down, but you can leave it up all week if you want to. Okay? As some of you know, I've not been feeling too well. And everything I seemed to be doing for my back was hurting my back because I didn't think it was fractured. But when we got home and did the CAT scan, we found out there was a fracture. So I see a spine specialist this week. I thought I saw one last week, and I went in and sat down with him. The emergency room actually gave me an appointment with him, and he said, I'm an ankle and foot doctor, but he said, I see the fracture, but can I send you to a spine specialist? So it was a wasted day. But look at the playground before you leave. We had a whole crew of people out here, about 8 or 10, put together that swing set. We actually hired somebody to come in, and in 2 days, him and his boys put up the new fence, took down the white fence. The white fence is gone. The trash is in the trash can. It'll be gone on Tuesday morning. And so we want to thank them. Some months back, we bought a good scrubber for the gym floor with a buffing pad, and it puts down soap, picks that up, and just it's wonderful in cleaning. So they've been running that. Alyssa's been running that about once a week. And the floor seemed about as clean as we were going to get it. So they cleaned it yesterday and put 3 new coats of wax on it. So you got to walk into the gym and see that. It is beautiful. A lot of things going on here, a lot of change going on here. But it isn't only here, it's also in our country. There's a lot of change going on. And I just want to talk about our freedom, our country. See, God created man, and he gave them freedom. Freedom to choose his way or choose the way of the world. And in the midst of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve made a choice because God gave them free will. And that choice was to go against what they knew God wanted them to do. We're continually faced with that choice in our lives today. We say, boy, if Adam and Eve just wouldn't have sinned, you would have. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, and all of us need a Savior. So God is the one that invented freedom. He's the one that came up with it. And this past week, I've spent a lot of time at home, so I had a lot of time to read. So I went through the documents of the United States. And I just want to go over a few things for you today, because I think every Sunday you ought to learn something new. It either needs to be from the Bible, it needs to be from history, it needs to be from science. Every Sunday you need to at least learn something new, or try to. In my entire ministry, I've tried to incorporate that. But the bottom line is, I don't want anyone to lose track of why we're here. And the main message for this church is Jesus Christ and being born again and living in his kingdom, not this kingdom that man has built up all around him. The Declaration of Independence. I just pulled out a couple excerpts. This was on July 4, 1776. It said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. You know where they got that? They got that from the book. That when you're born into this world, you're born as a man and a woman. We're all created equal. We should have opportunity. And if we have disabilities or something else, opportunities need to be made for us The Bible teaches us to take care of the widows. The Bible teaches us to take care of the children that are homeless, those who have worked for us, like the military. But all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. The government is being instituted in order to preserve the rights that God has given us. That God has given us. This is why they rebelled against England. Accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. In other words, people would have their life the way it is and be a slave before they'll stand up and change something. Our founding fathers knew that. And it takes something radical to have us stand up. And that's why the church has been under fire ever since it started over 2,000 years ago. Is because it has taught man to stand up for man. And not to just roll over and die because we are enslaved. He has called together legislative bodies to place unusual, uncomfortable, and distract from the depository of the public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measure. They changed laws in order for us to comply to a lesser law in order to enrich their own pockets. You know, we went about, Charlie Taylor and Bob Manley, probably been 17, 18 years ago, we were sitting and talking and said, you know, we ought to build a nursing home with assisted living and independent living. We should build one. And if we build one with all three of those, when a person buys one of those apartments, they know that they can eat dinner with other people in the church and love the Lord, and they'll never have to leave there. So I went looking, and I couldn't get a license for a nursing home because our government have passed laws because of lobbyists that only a certain number of nursing homes can be in any county according to its population over 65 years old. Which means the lousiest owner of the nursing home in Toledo is full. Which means they don't have to keep things up to standard for the people because a law has been passed that they don't have to have the standard. There are other things that have happened. The dentist lobby got a law passed, and there are several dental schools closed down because there was getting to be too much competition in dentistry. I don't know if you've went to the dentist, but I think a little competition wouldn't hurt them. He has called together legislative bodies to place unusual and uncomfortable and distance from. So here we have, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases. And we see that on a national basis. We see it no matter which party's in power. They want to get part of the power that the state has or local government has and impose their ideas and their standard upon each state and each county, each city, and each town. We see that today. What amazes me is how many congressmen and senators carry the Constitution of the United States around their pocket. They really should read it. We should read it. Now this is in 1776. This is not the Constitution. This is the Declaration of Independence. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assemble, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world, that be Jesus Christ, for the restitute of our intentions due, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of the right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiances to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain. Then we come to the Constitution of the United States. In its original transcript, it outlines the office of the president, the office of senators, the offices of Congress, and how their duties are to be expanded and how they're to be elected. That's the Constitution. The Constitution, when they wrote it, it only set up a government. Which brings us to the Bill of Rights, 1789. 1776, 1789, that's 13 years. And they decided that the Constitution of the United States needed more. And this is when Congress first met, after they had just chosen everyone. And they said, we're going to put together what's called a Bill of Rights. And it's going to have 10 articles in it. They found out it had 10. And these are the rights of the people that our government will give. And it was held in New York City on Wednesday, March 1st, 1789. And these clauses should be added, and as extended, the ground of public confidence in our government as part of the said Constitution. So these were added, the Bill of Rights, to the Constitution. I think that many times our government reads a Constitution about their job and the power and the authority they have, and they forget that we have a Bill of Rights that is part of that Constitution. The first one was we have freedom of religion, speech, and the press. That's just one. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, to petition the government for a readiness of grievances. Peaceful assembly, not unpeaceful assembly, not destroying assemblies, but peaceful assembly. The thing that amazes me about all of this is we do see freedom of speech. We see people burning flags. We see people yelling and screaming and hateful things about one another in the streets. But yet they're trying to tie the tongues of the ministers throughout the United States. There are laws that are trying to be passed. There was one that was just passed in California, and it's coming to every legislating group. That if someone is in sin in the congregation and they're 16, 17 years old, that we're not allowed to counsel them out of sin. That's just not right. I'm sure that all the bar owners would want the church's mouth shut about alcohol. I was in the Navy. A lot of guys drink in the Navy. You know, you've heard of drunken sailors? Well, I've seen them. I've seen 80 of them at a time driving a porcelain bus when they come back. And they'd come in and they'd have these cans that said Budweiser on them. I've never seen it make anybody wiser. They should have named it Bud Dumber, because everybody that drank it got dumber, every one of them. But we have those freedoms. And the church must keep its freedom of speech. I feel that I can say anything today. But what about those who are in college today that are being taught something different than I was taught? What they need to, the fence they need to walk on. There are many churches today, not only in our community, but all around this country, that there are certain things that the senior pastor have told the ministers they can't say. Because in the name of seeker-friendly, they can't say those things anymore. You must be born again. you must get saved. You must separate yourself from a life of sin. Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. That is also part of the Constitution. Before the Constitution was totally ratified, the Congress had to meet in order to do that, and they added that right to bear arms. So you can take your shirt off. Anywhere and just, walk around with bare arms, right? Doesn't say that there shouldn't be a law to take these arms out of the hands of crazy people. Doesn't say that everybody should be able to drive a car. It says they get a license, and the license should be, because people get killed with driving. Driver's license can be suspended, and if you drive without a license, you can go to jail. I don't see anything wrong with that. We need to do a little more house cleaning, I think. And until we start doing it on our side, I have 9 guns, by the way. And I believe it's okay to own them. But it's not okay if you put them in a place where someone can break in and steal them and kill your neighbor. That just doesn't seem right. You should be able to take care of them. My dad taught me how to use a gun, and the first gun I had was a BB gun. He took it away from me for a year. Maybe. That's a good standard for everybody. If you misuse it, it gets taken away for a year. Then we'll see how you do. I mean, that was for shooting the tops off of pop bottles and a couple barn windows. And a glance that broke a car windshield. I don't know what he had done if I'd have killed somebody. Third Amendment was the housing of soldiers. They just can't come in and say, we're taking over your house. The government doesn't have that right. That home is your castle, and you have the right to keep it. The fourth, protection from unreasonable search and seizure. See, all these are for the people. The first part of the Constitution was just set up the government. All these are for the people. They're not allowed to come in and search you without due cause. I won't be long. Then they came along and they said in the Fifth Amendment, the right of life, liberty, and prosperity, subject for the same offense to be twice put to jeopardy of life, liberty, and not shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. You ever have that property that they tried to do eminent domain on? Jack Smith told me about property he had down by the university. They wanted it. They just wanted to move in and take it. Jack took him to court. I think what he told me, this was many years ago, he said, the judge said, if it's worth more money to him than it is to you, he can keep it. You work out a deal if you want to buy it, but we're not going to eminent domain it. We have that right. Civil cases is the seventh. You have the same right. The eighth one, bail and fines cannot be set so high that you can't pay them in order just to keep you in jail. That's the Eighth Amendment. The ninth, this right, you shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And the 10th, the power to kept by the states and the people are received to the states representatively of the people. So the states have rights. That's the first 10. Now I'm just going to skip several, and I'm going to highlight one. The 13th Amendment, they abolished slavery. That was 1865. It took 100 years. But yet in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it says all men are created equal. See, here's the thing about the United States. As long as the United States is led by Christians, that the Bible is the bottom line, at some point we'll get it right. Because someone will step up and say, you know what? You've been living contrary to what the Scripture teaches and what the Constitution allows. So you can't put one group of people down and lift up another group of people just because you believe in capitalism and the guy with the money can tell the people what to do. Right today that we have people that cannot do, in companies that are making millions and billions of dollars, that are not being paid a wage that they can live on. They're subsidized by food stamps. That would be like a landowner in Georgia telling the government, I don't have enough food to feed my slaves. So will you kick in and give me food stamps so that I can keep my slaves? That makes it unfair to the person that had the plantation that was paying a living wage and paying his own way. Let me tell you how this works. These are not political things. I believe the church needs to lead the politics, then they'll get this stuff right. Amen. If the church doesn't lead, and I can tell you this, neither party's right. Both of them want their way and only their way when they are in power. Amen. If Meijer is paying a living wage, say $15 an hour, $16 an hour, say Walmart's paying $10, but the people at Walmart can get food stamps, the people at Meijer can't get food stamps, so they go to a Walmart because they make more money with the food stamps. That's unfair to the company that's paying the living wage, to subsidize them by the government. (1870). You wonder why this one had to even be written, and this is the 15th Amendment. The right of the citizens of the United States shall not be denied or abridged in the United States of race, color, previous conditions of servitude. In other words, all men are created equal, but some are more equal than others. Now, the slaves have their freedom, but we're not going to let them vote. And do you realize even after this amendment was passed that some of the states that had slavery, that they would trump up charges to arrest these people that picked their cotton and work their plantations, because according to their state law, they could make them work in the cotton fields and work on those plantations. So they trumped up laws in order to keep people in servitude. So they had to pass this. And this is a Christian thing. In the Bible, the Samaritans, they were bad people. They weren't well liked by the Jews. But Jesus went there and stayed and said, as long as they're getting saved, it's okay. He did not put his approval on them and how they were living. He put his approval on them who came to Christ and who got saved. Probation, 1919. You weren't allowed to sell alcohol anywhere in the world. Now it flows like water in the churches. 1920, the women got their right to vote. Again, according to the first 10 of the Bill of Rights, and in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. Well, that's men, preacher. They didn't intend on women to be equals. Well, they are. You know, it takes just as much blood to save a woman's soul as it does a man's soul. It takes the same type of repentance. And when you get to heaven, you're not going to marry or be married, but you'll know one another. So I just don't see the difference in that. But the Americans got it right. After they let women vote, 21st Amendment. In 33, 13 years later, they repealed the 18th Amendment that said you couldn't have alcohol. Amazing to me. Now, I'm not implying that had anything to do with women voting. It just came out that way because I was raised by a very chauvinistic father. But all these freedoms come from this book. Where America's run into trouble is where we have judges that do not believe the book. Where we have politicians that do not believe the book. And so when they look to God, they don't look to God anymore. They look to their own knowledge. And they write a logical dissertation about why this should happen or that shouldn't happen, and we buy into their logic. I'm glad our founding fathers didn't buy into the logic of the King of England. I'm glad that they saw it this way. And if we stick to these things, I really think that God will bless America. But we got to get more Christians involved. People have been searching for thousands of years about where is freedom found in the Bible. It's found all the way through the Bible from Adam and Eve. Like I said, they had a free choice. Then when Jesus stood up and they opened the scroll and he read from the book of Isaiah, and he read this: the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of the sight of the blind, to set liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. That's in Luke chapter 4, 17 through 20. God came, Jesus came, in order to set to liberty, to make freedom. And our country was founded on that, no matter what anyone says. And it only comes from this. Because you look at all other religions, the other religions, they have this guy that you go to war and you fight and you kill and you have hatred because you have man's laws rather than God's laws. America didn't always get it right. And Christians today, I can tell you, don't always get it right. And I can tell you, I've not always gotten it right. But God has a way of showing us in due time what is right. Jesus came to free us from death and sin and the grave and enslave us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. If you abide in the word, you are truly a disciple, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's freedom. And God gives us freedom to choose our own path. All things are lawful to me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful to me, but I will not be dominated by anything. For you were called to freedom, brethren. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. Just because you can buy something doesn't make it right to use it. Just because you're allowed to do something doesn't mean you should be doing it. The Bible was the bottom line for the founding fathers of our country, and they didn't get it right on how to put it into use, but they got it right when they put it on the paper. But the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights of the United States, the Declaration of Independence of the United States is not the Bible. They can be amended. The thing about the amendments beyond the 10th one is many of them didn't give freedom to the people to protect the people. Many of them did just the opposite, to control the people. And freedom is about not having those shackles. And a Christian will choose what is right. Not because the church says so, but because God has impressed upon their heart, here's how you should live. I can tell you, I think we need a few more amendments. Term limits would be a good one. If you read the Constitution, they're supposed to meet in December, and the representatives meet for a while and then go back to their jobs. Wouldn't hurt to get back to that. I'd like to see some real farmers, not millionaire farmers' sons that went to Harvard and Yale in government, but real farmers that have dug in the dirt. I'd like to see some real factory workers in Congress that have really worked in a factory and go back to that factory when they're not in session. I think we cut the session down to 3 months if we had real people in it. I'd like to see another term limit put on the president. 1 election, 6 years, and you're out. Then you don't have to play this political game the first 4 years in order to get 4 more. I think there are a lot of things we could do, but you're the only folks listen to me. Actually not. I want to read you something that I wrote, and some of these things this poem that I wrote has been shared. Let's see if I find it. Has been shared 218 times on Facebook. It's not bad for a little town, a church. No one knows where it's at. But we're reaching folks. We went on our first trip with our travelers. We went to Washington, D.C. And we went to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. And I have been there many, many, many times. And I'm always impressed. There's a tomb in Arlington that stands high up on a hill. In the tomb lays the bodies of soldiers, their name tags they could not fill. The tomb of the unknown soldiers that gave their life so we could be free. The tomb stands high over Washington for all the world to see. 21 steps by the sentinel, then he snaps his heels and turns. He stands there for 21 seconds, and with 21 steps he returns. It is a continual 21-gun salute for the sacrifice of their lives. Their nameless body lay in the tomb, no mention of children or wife. People come from around the world to watch the changing of the guard in rain, snow, storm, and heat. For the sentinel, nothing is too hard. His heels snap, his weapon secure, and his head never turns. He does his duty out of respect. That's something we all can learn. God bless you.